President Trump is back in Washington this morning, facing a full legislative to-do list. Congress must agree on a spending bill by January 19th in order to avoid the government being shut down.
After that comes a March deadline to fix DACA. That is the law affecting immigrants brought to the United States illegally as children. The president wants funding for a border wall in exchange for protecting those so-called dreamers. He plans to discuss the agenda with House Speaker Paul Ryan and GOP Senate Leader Mitch McConnell at Camp David this weekend. Washington Post political reporter Jordan Frasier joins us now from Washington with the very latest. So, Jordan, let's talk about that upcoming meeting at Camp David this weekend. What issues do you expect to be first on the president's 2018 agenda?
Yeah, well, I think the overarching agenda for Republicans is really keeping the momentum going. They finished 2017 off really strong with passing tax reform, but you just ticked through some really important business items like keeping the government open that are going to be the top priority first off as we start this new year. But then the president has also made clear that he really wants to work on infrastructure and thinks that's where Congress should put their priority. Where we have Paul Ryan, he has made it clear that he wants to talk about entitlement reform, and Mitch McConnell, as you mentioned, wants to talk about immigration. So they kind of have these three competing agenda items that will be what they're going to try and hash out this weekend at Camp David.
So you brought up Paul Ryan's interest in potentially overhauling the nation's entitlement programs,
right.
But Mitch McConnell is not interested in that at all. Can you explain the divide between these two GOP leaders and whether or not you think they'll find some middle ground?
Right. So I think entitlement reform is dead on arrival on Capitol Hill. This is really more of a passion project for Paul Ryan, much like tax reform was. This is something he has cared about his entire career. On the Senate side, I think Mitch McConnell is more pragmatic about this and doesn't see it as something that can logistically get done in 2018. And so he doesn't want to waste time working on that.
So in a tweet last week, President Trump addressed Democrat leaders, writing, quote, "There can be no DACA without the desperately needed wall at the southern border." What comes next in this battle ahead of the March deadline? And it seems as if the president is still pursuing this border wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the border wall is not going away anytime soon. With DACA and with Dreamers, I think it is something that both Republicans and Democrats want to accomplish, but I think the advantage is really on the Democratic side. This is an easier issue for them. It's trickier for Republicans just because of how entangled it is in immigration and the rhetoric surrounding President Trump's border wall. But I do think this is where some real bipartisan work could get done. The possibility is definitely there for a compromise to be worked out where Dreamers are protected and there's some sort of immigration enforcement mechanism. I don't know that that includes the president's border wall, but there's no doubt in my mind that he will be pushing for that and tweeting about it. And we have not heard the last of the border wall, that's for sure.
So meanwhile, the government runs out of money on January 19th. Right. You know, when you talk about DACA, the feeling was that perhaps the Democrats would try to link DACA to funding the government. It looks like the president's going to dig his heels in. Are we going to see a spending agreement that extends beyond just a few weeks after the 19th?
That's hard to say. If we could predict that here in Washington, I would have a huge career. I'm not sure.
Your crystal ball not working?
Right, my crystal ball isn't working. I think a short-term incremental increase is more likely. That's how Washington tends to work here. But, you know, we'll see. I think anything is possible. I think a lot will come out of this Camp David meeting, and as well as all of congressional leaders, including the Democrats, will meet with the president this week at the White House. So, you know, maybe the president and Chuck and Nancy, they'll work something out. We'll see.
So all of this, of course, is happening as lawmakers gear up for the midterms. What issues do you expect to factor into this year's elections? Are we potentially witnessing, as some on the left have called it, a blue wave, or are we going to see what the president has said, which is the base is strong, and that means in the states that he's done very well, or he did very well in 2016, he will continue to do well in?
I mean, that is the question, right? So I think the disadvantage for Democrats here is we've got 10 months until the midterm elections. That's a long time in politics to kind of keep the energy going. You know, they had great success in Virginia this fall. They had great success just a few weeks ago in Alabama with Doug Jones. Those are all really positive signs for the Democrats. The question is, can they keep that going? And how much does 2018 become a referendum on the president? That's yet to be seen. And, you know, 2018 is going to be a really quick year. We've got a lot of things, the government shutdown, things happening here in Washington. And then the midterms will start, you know, this summer in earnest. And so we're going to be there before we know it. And we'll see how much it becomes a referendum on Washington, and if Democrats can really keep the energy that they've seen in the last couple of races they've faced.
All right, Jordan Frasier, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.